and another episode of Kim's Corner with Kim Keefe's Team Open Doors at Compass. And I am here with the fabulous Genna Hibbs. Hello, Genna.
Thank you, Kim. You're so sweet. Thank you for having me.
It's easy. You're so sweet. Anyway, Genna, I have known, well, for quite some time. We didn't do the math on this, but
It's been a while.
We have a history. Mm-hmm. And I have known Genna over the course of time with her role as an attorney with trademarks and patents. And every time I come up with a weird question about, something unusual relating to trademarks or patents, Genna's my gal, my first phone call, my first email. And I thought, what a great opportunity for our community to know what you do. And actually, this stemmed from an email from another Compass agent that had a question about trademark. And I immediately thought of Genna and zipped the email to her, and she said, absolutely, I can help. And I'm like, of course you can help, you're Genna Hibbs. So, Genna Hibbs with the Schmiser Olsen.
It's true. I'm a partner at Schmiser Olsen now.
And this is big news because Genna has been with Hibbs Law for all of my lifetime.
It's true. I just hit 13 years of Hibbs Law, which was a firm that I started pretty much right out of law school. Okay. And I hung my shingle and said, I'm going to do IP law. Okay. And I've had a great run, but I, just realized I was ready to not be a business owner anymore and just do the IP stuff. I get so excited about the legal work, and the business owner stuff is not as fun. So I just wanted to really focus in on that, and I think I found a really good fit with a firm that's very similar to how I've run my firm, so it feels very natural, and that also gives me just better schedule stability for my time with Teddy, because he's 5 now.
And this is a whole other topic. Yes,
it's true.
The Teddy topic. Yes. And while Teddy might sound like a cute little puppy dog, it's actually her 5-year-old son. And yes, who's quite adorable and is also part of this process. So.
It's true. Just trying to do the whole thing. So yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, you're doing it well.
Thank you. Thank
you
very much.
Help us out a little bit with your background, what you do, what's your specialty?
Right. No, thank you. That's a great question. So, because a lot of people, you would be surprised how much you actually run into intellectual property in your day-to-day life, but you just might not realize it. So, book covers, billboards, the places you go to eat, just any media that you're consuming, all of that is intellectual property. And depending on how you're using it and where you're using it and how long you've used it and all sorts of other factors, you can sometimes register to protect specific pieces of those things. And then that will let you kind of stand your ground against other people encroaching in and taking your things and using them as their own. So that comes from that. But my background, I was a science nerd and a book nerd and a band nerd. And when I was in high school, I was debating and I was learning about genetics in my honors biology class. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. If I could just argue about genetics for a living, I would be so happy. And so
is there a niche for that?
I'm like, where does that happen? Yeah. So I finally realized, okay, I should go to law school. And I, had a bit of a path to get there. I taught English in Japan for a year, and I worked in a laboratory for a few years doing QA/QC testing in a bunny suit in a sterile suite.
Oh gosh.
A lot of fun stuff. But then eventually I found my way to law school. I went to Gonzaga, and I double majored in undergrad at the University of Kansas. I did genetics and English literature because I wanted to balance out all my hard science classes, so I started taking lots of poetry courses, English courses, and I actually applied for the school to have a poetry minor, which was approved, but by the time it was approved, I was already on my way to a double major, so I just went for full English literature. But anyway, so I roll into law school, and I've got my science background, and I'm just like, where's the science law at? And they said, oh, you're going to go intellectual property. So I started taking classes and meeting professors and adjunct professors and doing events, that they have for the students. And something I really noticed was that people that do IP are usually pretty chill. They're pretty laid back. They seem really passionate about what they do. They seem to like enjoy what they do, and it hasn't sucked the life out of their souls yet. So I took that as a really good sign.
Awesome.
And just kind of went with that. So that was kind of my background beforehand. And then I moved to Chicago because I wanted to live in the Midwest, but I didn't want to go back to Kansas. And I love Chicago, but I am not a city person at all. So I came to Chicago. I started my law firm, and then I pretty much immediately moved out here to the Woodstock area, and got a little hobby farm with my dad, and we started gardening, and I started building my practice, and I've just been here ever since.
So, wow, there is so much in that cute little story, and I love so much about it because almost everyone, when you get to take the time to get to know them, the path is often so very wavy, but when you came out of that were the things that you loved, which were the science aspect, and also I think it helps to have someone, kind of point you in a direction to say, boom, this would be great for you. And then ultimately, the best part of all, for me, is that you chose the Woodstock area to make your home. And that's one of the things I think that, we'll touch on just for a moment, because in this area, we have access to the metro train that gets us downtown, if you take the express train, an hour and a half, and or you can jump on the tollway. And we have this ability to be someplace really big and to do really important things, but to be able to live on a hobby farm and to focus on, intellectual property. And and do big things here.
It's true. And I feel like this part of the country is the perfect mix of that for me. And I mean, we're so lucky to be living in the United States of America because we have such a diverse amount of ecosystems. You can live in the desert, you can live in the jungle, we have it all. And for the most part. And so then, moving here, I was in Chicago, kind of just in the city, like, oh, the city, and there's the lake. But we came out to visit some cousins that were in Crystal Lake, and my dad and I love the rolling prairies in Kansas and the Flint Hills around Manhattan, beautiful area. And we came out here and we were like, this is looking cool. Like, there's weeping willows, so a little different climate, but very familiar. It felt very at home. And then just like you said, like the ability to head out of the office, hop on the train, go downtown, have a fun day trip, and then take the train back. You can't beat that. Like, you just can't beat that. We have it all here. So
exactly.
And, go to Lake Geneva and do all the things.
So now, when I think of intellectual property and even just the niche of attorney work that you do, I do think this is big city work, right? So how much work do you do for people in McHenry County? I mean, and should we be doing more to protect our property?
Right. That is a great question. Yeah, I do a mix. So I have, I can practice with clients anywhere in the world as long as they're looking for U.S. federal intellectual property protections. And so that means that I am able to work with, and I do work with people all over the world sometimes. But yeah, I definitely have a concentration of clients like in the Chicagoland area, and then some here in the county too, because, like I mentioned before, intellectual property is really everywhere. So if you're a small business owner and you are selling products at the farmer's market and you have a label, you have a brand there, that is a trademark. And there are things that you could do to protect that. There are things that you can do to make that stronger. And so there's definitely a lot of untapped potential intellectual property rights growth in areas that I think a lot of people don't really realize. But you really have to balance that with where you are with your business and where you're headed and what your plans are. So that's why it's really good to sit down with somebody and really talk it out and just be like, this is what I want, and then just see how the law can work for you so that you can position yourself. Because something that a lot of people don't know is that if you are using a trademark as a trademark, you are gathering what are called common law trademark rights without ever having spent a dime to register that trademark. And so you can potentially enforce your trademark rights if somebody tries to steal them without having a registration, which is a very powerful thing. And that's in our federal statute. The trademark statute gives people the ability to enforce their trademarks even without a registration. And I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Right.
And so I love sharing this information with people, because if they understand, oh, I am building something that's protectable. And then a further step is the choice of trademark. And so that's something I see a lot of when it comes to trademark use, is people need to pick a mark that is distinctive so that it can grow stronger over time. Because if you pick something that's more generic and descriptive, that opens the door for people to competitively be able to use those same terms. And so you're not making yourself a niche, really. You're making yourself an area that would be harder to protect, because you have to prove first that they shouldn't be allowed to use it.
Sure.
And then you can enforce it. So the choice of trademark can be very important on whether or not it's easy or difficult for somebody to enforce the trademark that they've been developing and growing over time.
That's
so
fair.
Talking to somebody early on and having some key changes can really make a huge difference, like 5 or 10 years down the road when something happens.
Okay. That's very fair. So I was sitting on my deck one day, and there may likely, the last story, there was a glass of wine in hand. And I was enjoying the view on the deck, and I said to my husband, "Oh, I love where I live." And I turned to him and said, "That sounds like a great slogan, doesn't it?" So I went and bought a website that said "Love Where You Live," and I just started going with that, and on and on and on. And I do feel like it's generic enough that I probably couldn't do something about that. But tell me from your perspective. I've been using it for 5 or 6 years now, let's say.
Interesting. So I think it would first come down to, are you using it as a slogan, or are you using it as like a house brand? So is it the main banner on all of the goods and services that you're providing, or is it an add-on slogan that you're using as a catchphrase?
Yes and yes.
Yes and yes. Well, the slogan part is harder to prove because it uses common words. There's First Amendment stuff that other people and competitors should be able to use similar words or the same words. But if you're using it as an actual house brand, that can actually that can make it a little bit easier, and it can make usually the burden of evidence that you have to show to the USPTO, which is our federal agency that handles trademark registrations, is a little lower. So it's going to be a little easier maybe to get that registration versus a slogan, which they're going to want a little bit more evidence to show that people actually will recognize that slogan as a source of origin, as a trademark in and of itself, to indicate, oh, isn't that slogan that Kim uses in her podcast?
Wouldn't that be amazing?
And that's where you're headed. That's where you're headed, evidence-wise.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. So you bought a website
for 12. Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Very exciting.
Started right off the bat with it reflects on everything we do and why we do it. And the question is, do you love where you live? Yes or no, right? And out of that yes or no, I can help you.
So true. Well, and then another fun thing that's making me think of this too with the IP is you might be inclined to make some t-shirts maybe, or some mugs.
Check.
Right?
Check.
But interestingly enough, the use of a trademark on the front of a shirt is not actually considered trademark use. That's just kind of marketing. So it's not actually indicating the source of the actual shirt itself. So if you wanted to see what the trademark was on a t-shirt, you would actually check the tag in the back. So if the tag, or a little tag down here, so if the tag isn't saying the trademark, then this ain't gonna fly. So that's not gonna get you there. So which a lot of people like, a little counterintuitive, right? Because it's like a billboard or something, right? Yeah, you would think of it like that, but it's not how it's treated with the law.
So in Kim's line of work, what is Kim's first step? She contacts Genna Hibbs and says, "Is this a consultation kind of?" What are my next steps?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. So usually an initial consultation of some sort. Some attorneys will charge you for initial consultations. I do not, and I will give you a full free hour to talk about the whole situation, and I'll basically give you as much like legal guidance and standards as I can based on your situation. So you have kind of a do's and don'ts sort of scenario.
Okay.
And then if you want to move forward with things for my services, I would give you my fees and rates. But usually in that kind of situation, hey, I'm playing around with this trademark. I want to get serious about it. The first thing you're going to do is minimize your risk and do a search. And so a clearance search is going to be where an attorney is going to actually go out and analyze, you know, what's going on so that you have an idea of where you're headed. And oops, you know, maybe somebody else already has it, so maybe you need to back off and rebrand before things get any bigger.
Right.
It's also a good idea, which I don't see a lot of people doing this as much as I think they should, but doing like add-on searches where it's not just searching the USPTO database of trademarks that exist, but also maybe doing an e-commerce search or doing a companion search with maybe the state level or something to really get into some of these deeper levels that, you know, there might be use and it's just not registered. But that's important because in trademark law, the senior user is the winner. So whoever was doing it longest gets those rights. But the big difference between that common law rights that you don't need to register for and having that national registration in place is that you get nationwide protection with the registration. If you're common law, you're limited to where you are and a reasonable expansion thereof, which is a little furry and fuzzy when it comes to like e-commerce online stuff because where are the limits on that? But the idea is that if you're a mom and pop shop and you've been up and running for a long time, you should be able to stay where you are because you were there first and you shouldn't be punished for not getting the federal registration. A great example of this is Burger King. And so there was originally a Burger King up north. I don't remember if it was Wisconsin or Minnesota, but there was a Burger King mom and pop shop. Then the Burger King, you know, that we know, opened up in Florida and they started down there and they got their federal registration in place. They started growing. Stores were building. They finally expanded up north. And then they sent a cease and desist letter to the mom and pop shop and said, hey, Burger King, you got to close. And so they were like, no, we've been here longer. And so even though they didn't have any registration, they were able to stay where they are and not. So that's something I do love about trademark law is that it protects businesses. It protects the little guy in ways that you don't always see in other areas of law, which I really appreciate.
Wonderful. And you already touched on a hair of this, but in the back of my mind, said, well, shoot, there's probably 12 other people using Love Where You Live. I mean, otherwise I would have .com, you know, website automatically, and I don't. So how do I keep myself from getting into trouble by, you know, my next brilliant idea that is already out there and I just happen to come up with it 20 years later?
I really think it comes from those searches of seeing, you know, getting that professional help to see what the lay of the land is so that you can be aware of, is it smooth sailing? Should you jump in right away and try to nail it down? Or do you want to be careful where you are? There's a lot of ways to thread the needle when it comes to trademark law. It's very fact specific. It really depends on who else is already out there and what the goods and services are and, you know, how it's going to be looked at. Just so many factors that come into play. But the more you know, the earlier, the better you're going to be, and the better you're going to be able to position yourself to be stronger over time. Because that's where trademarks get really powerful, is over time they grow in strength. You get a bigger reputation. People recognize you more. When it comes to the registration, after your 5th, 6th year, you do a maintenance period with your trademark registration, and you can become incontestable. And so when you try to stop an infringer from using your trademark, one of their options is to try to invalidate your trademark so that you have nothing to assert against them. And that could be bad, right? Losing your trademark. Okay. There's probably a list of like 14 things that they could do to try to get rid of your trademark, just right out the bat. But when you're incontestable, like almost all of those get wiped off the table, and there's only a small little pile left that they could actually assert, and they would have to have good evidence about it. So your trademark becomes stronger even just from that registration standpoint. Let alone factoring in all the strength of recognition that grows over the years. Okay. And that's what the courts look at.
Now, do trademarks expire? Is there a time limit on trademarks?
No.
There's not?
As long as you're using it, and you keep using it, and you have to be careful of drift. So this is a factor I saw when I was working with a mentor, and then sadly he passed away in 2019, and I took over his business. And so he had some clients that had been sitting pretty, and they had 10-year so after you get up to 10 years, it's only every 10 years you got to check back in to do your maintenance, right? And so in 10 years, your business could start to evolve and change, and suddenly, oh, we're using the number 3 instead of the Roman numeral 3, or suddenly we're selling shoes now instead of t-shirts, that sort of thing. So you can drift and evolve, and you can get yourself into a pickle if you're no longer doing the thing that your registration is covering. But the good news is, too, that you can always add on new registrations to add in those new goods and services. But if you're still using it, it can last forever. And this is also making me think of a brand of, I don't think it's honey, but it's like gold syrup. And it's a trademark in England that they've been selling this product for like 150 years. And they announced that they were updating their logo for the first time in like 112 years or something. And it was just like, wow. Because it can just keep going and going and going.
Wow.
But that's a big contrast from patents, which are a limited monopoly. Okay. So the patents are going to give you an actual monopoly. Like, hello, founding fathers, they hated monopolies. Like, that's part of the reason that we had our revolution to begin with, was unfair monopolies being granted by the king. And yet, it's important enough that we have patents in our country that they grant you a limited monopoly for 15, 20 years. Okay. And so your time will run out on that, but while your patent is running, you're supposed to have completely exclusive rights to whatever that patent is. Okay. And it's all you. But the idea is that if you build that with your trademark usage during your period of exclusivity, that when the patent falls away and it's public domain and anybody can make it, people are still going to pull your product off the shelf because they recognize your brand. Sure. And that trademark is strong, and it's going to carry you forward as a market leader.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
And that's probably what I was thinking was patents expire, not the trademark. So good to know. Mm. And you, of course, help with patenting products and words. I mean, what can you patent?
So patents are there's a whole fun thing about subject matter eligibility. And so with patents, you can patent a product, like an apparatus. It could be a product by manufacturer. You can protect a machine. Mm-hmm. But there's things that you can't get a patent for. Like you can't do, natural phenomenon or things that are just basically, a mathematical equation or something like that. It has to be really tied to something specific. But one that comes up quite a bit is human activity is not patentable. So if you are training people on how to be better business leaders, or, there's a whole business method thing that they used to allow business methods for how to, and now, they
Sure.
can't. And so there's this whole kind of service industry that is really creating things that are fairly technical and practicable, but we've decided, under the law that that's not something that's patentable because somebody could just do it and it would be too hard to police, and there's lots of factors. But the patent stuff is, the main thing that people think of with patents is utilitarian patents, which are, methods or products or things like that, versus the other main category of patents, which are design patents, where you can protect the ornamental aspects of a thing. So if I wanted to get a design patent for this cute planter here, and, I wanted it to have these lines across here, and presuming it was unique, I could get a design patent for that particular thing, and it's just going to protect exactly that. So if anybody, rounds it off or makes it taller or something like that, they're not infringing, right?
Wow.
So design is very much like a
very
copy
specific.
of this. Yeah. But the utilitarian patents, depending on how you write them, is something that can be a little bit more amorphous and abstract in that how you interpret it could cover lots of different embodiments. And so that's where I get really excited with my British Romantic poetry background, is writing the patents, because you basically, somebody walks in the door and they're like, here is my invention. And so I have to take that physical thing and basically create weird, boring technical poetry to describe it. And so it just becomes
that is mind blowing, really, when you think about how you incorporate the 2 degrees accidentally, right? Accidentally and on purpose.
It's true. It worked out. It worked out.
And you think about too the arts and the importance of art in design and in law and selling real estate. I mean, I really think that there is a huge correlation between arts and learning and expressing yourself through the arts and then the practical application of anything else, sport, law, science, real estate, all of it.
Right.
It is so connected, and that's probably another podcast again.
and isn't that why, as a society, we fight for the arts in schools, for kids to go to band and like try things out? Not that we expect them all to become the next Picasso, but because we want those parts of their brains to open up and like be open to new things, and that has to start from an early age. But that brings in kind of the third big intellectual property factor that's out there, which is copyrights. Which I feel like people have a better handle on copyrights for the most part. Like, I got a thing, it's copyrighted.
Been slapped on the hand
right?
before.
Got to be careful.
Music in a video.
Right? Or heaven forbid you accidentally grab a Getty image. And,
oh gosh. Oh yes. Big slap on the hand.
Watch out.
Right.
But yeah, so copyright would be the other factor.
Okay.
So, maybe I have a design patent on the object, but then maybe I also have a copyright involved too. Okay, which is kind of interesting. But the law has changed a little bit with copyrights in the last few years, in that it's become more and more essential that if you are producing something that is copyrightable, that you're worried that somebody is going to be taking, you do need to do your registration. You don't want to wait on that. You want to get it out there as soon as you're producing your publication or your work. You want to get that registration out there, because that's going to give you a lot more leverage to protect yourself, so that you don't have to get to court, so that you don't have to worry about all these extra factors. It's going to be a bigger deterrent for somebody to face down an actual copyright registration versus somebody that hasn't registered their copyright, and they would have to take you to court and prove that they lost sales and damages from what the infringer was doing. All these extra hoops you have to jump. Whereas if you're already registered with your copyright, you're allowed to sue, and the judge is allowed to do statutory damages and just say, you're a bad guy, and I'm going to make you pay $50,000.
Well, and it's so interesting that you always lead me into my next question before I even get there. She's so just mind.
And she's the one with the paper. I don't have
connecting. What paper? Oh yeah, there's paper. No, because the next question stems from, all right, if I get notified, let's say, that I've infringed or I'm using or I did something, I'm getting a notice perhaps from an attorney's office first.
Maybe, yeah.
And then are you my first phone call? Say, Genna, I got in trouble, help me, bail me out of jail, please.
It would probably be good to pull somebody in at that point and then analyze the situation, and does it make sense to just capitulate and change and switch gears, or is there a reason to stand your ground about it? But it is good to get an idea of where you're standing and what the possible repercussions are, so that you can minimize your risk and make the best choice for you moving forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if I have a concern someone's wronged me, do I call Genna for that?
Yes, I would definitely recommend that, because, back with the Burger King example, so under trademark law, if you threaten to take somebody down, like if you don't stop using this mark, I'm going to, come after you. Mm-hmm. If you threaten that somebody could potentially be harmed by your trademark registration, they're allowed to move for a cancellation proceeding with the U.S. government agency and ask that your registration be revoked. And so if you are just like, oh, I found this infringer and I'm going to send them a letter. Oh, it turns out they've been doing this for 15 years longer than you have. Right. Now you've just opened a can that you probably don't want to open.
Okay.
So it's very important that you always kind of get a lay of the land before you jump in anywhere and send anybody a letter.
Perfect. All right. Wow. Way more than I anticipated hearing and did not know. And thank you. My goodness.
Hopefully useful information.
Really useful. Certainly for me. I hope you found it useful as well. But I guess from a closing standpoint, Anything else that that you'd like to touch on regarding your IP work, or even just a passion that you'd like to push as far as something, I don't know, Teddy's selling, Matchbox cars for, right, yeah, for the PTA.
Well, I think, a smaller area of my practice that not a lot of people know about because it doesn't maybe come up as much is I also do regulatory compliance, like for FDA stuff. And so class 1 and class 2 medical devices is something that I help, startups with and businesses with, like kind of getting through those legal hurdles and navigating those kind of healthcare systems on like getting, if you have a health service or product sort of aspect, whether or not you're trying to get it covered by, Medicare or, other insurance companies. So I have kind of this like side kind of health FDA branch, which is a lot of fun. But I also do a lot of volunteer work for a few different organizations in the Chicagoland area. There's the Matter Incubator Accelerator. It's a health accelerator, and it's in the Merchandise Mart downtown. And I've been a mentor there pretty much since they've opened. And they are a great place for startups that have a healthcare aspect to join. And there's cohorts, and they learn a bunch of stuff, and they do pitches and like all this stuff. So it's a very good organization. And then similarly, an organization that not everybody might know about is the Chicago Inventors Organization. And that's a nonprofit that's right next to Chinatown, and they have a full suite of services for anybody that's starting up a business. They will do everything from conception to on the shelves. So they teach you there's so many things that are needed for when you're starting a business beyond just the legal aspect, right? I'm just one little piece of the whole puzzle of starting a business and launching a product line and doing all that. But they do a really great job of offering a whole bunch of material and classes to their members for a very affordable rate, and they've been doing a great job with that for years and years. I think they're over 20 years now they've been doing that.
Wonderful. Yeah, what a great tidbit, too. So thank you. So basically, if you have questions about anything in life, reach out to Genna.
I'll point you in the right direction as much as I can.
She has all the answers, or the person who can help you with that. So, Genna, thank you. What an absolute pleasure.
Oh.
And,
wow. Well, and Kim, I'm so honored to hang out with you and spend time with you and to know you, and just everything you do is with grace and expertise, and you bring such calm and clarity to every situation. And so I love you to pieces, and I'm just so grateful for you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And with that, I'm Keith.
And I'm Genna Hibbs.
And we love where we live.